New York, 1778. British military patrols are everywhere. No one could have imagined that the fate of an independent nation hung under the shoe of an ordinary farmer, a housewife's laundry on a clothesline, and some numbers written in invisible ink. Today, we will unlock a true historical mystery, one without which today's America would not even be on the map. Welcome to the History Vault. Today, listen to the incredible epic of the Culper Spy Ring. It was a time of extreme darkness for America. The British Army had turned New York City into an impenetrable fortress. General George Washington knew that before winning on the battlefield, he had to win the war of information. When would the British attack New Jersey? Where was their fleet? To find the answers, he had to form a team whose existence would have no documentary evidence. He instructed his intelligence chief, Benjamin Talmadge, find someone whom the British would not suspect in the slightest. Talmadge returned to his childhood village of Setauket in Long Island. There, he found Abraham Woodhull. Abraham was an ordinary farmer whose movements were extremely simple. To deceive the British, he would go to New York City to sell vegetables and livestock. But his real purpose was different. During each trip, he would count British cannons and soldier tents. He became the first member of the ring, codenamed Culper Sr. Gathering information was easy, but smuggling it was equivalent to death. The British searched every person, so they took refuge in science. A chemist named James J. invented a special type of invisible ink. Abraham would write news of his family's well-being in ordinary ink, but in the white spaces between the lines, he would write secret British movements with invisible ink. When this letter reached Washington, he would recover the secret writing by rubbing a special chemical on it. Information had to be sent from New York to Washington via Long Island by sea. Anna Smith Strong signaled along this dangerous route. Anna turned her laundry line into an intelligence device. If she hung a black petticoat on the line, it meant the secret messenger Caleb Brewster had arrived with a boat. Then, the number of white handkerchiefs she hung indicated the location of the message. British patrols would laugh at her, but they didn't know this housewife was America's chief signal officer. The most secret member of the ring was Robert Townsend, codenamed Culper Jr. He ran a coffee house and a cloth shop in New York City. British officers would hang out there. Townsend posed as an indifferent shopkeeper in front of them, but his ears were attuned to the officers' tables. One day, he overheard a terrifying conspiracy. The British were printing millions of counterfeit dollars to cripple the American economy. By reporting this to Washington in time, the American economy was saved. The year was 1780. The tide of the war had turned into one of the most difficult periods for America. It was at this moment that the Culper Spy Ring uncovered their greatest conspiracy. General Benedict Arnold was George Washington's most beloved and trusted general. However, driven by resentment and greed, he conspired with the British. He planned to surrender the vital West Point fortress to the enemy. But Culper agent Robert Townsend sensed the secret correspondence between Arnold and British Major John Andre. In a breathless operation, Andre was captured and the maps of the fortress were found hidden inside his boots. When the maps and the evidence of Benedict Arnold's betrayal reached General Washington, he was stunned into silence for a moment. How could the general he trusted most stab him in the back? History says that night, Washington sat alone in his tent and wept. However, because of the information provided by the Culper Ring, Arnold's plan failed. West Point was saved, and America was rescued from a certain defeat. Although Arnold managed to escape, his co-conspirator John Andre was sent to the gallows. The most mysterious character of the Culper Spy Ring was a woman whose real name remains unknown to history even today.
She was known only by her code name, Agent 355. She was highly educated and elegant, often attending dinner parties with high-ranking British officials. Because she was a woman, the British often spoke carelessly of war plans in her presence. It is believed she provided secret intelligence that encouraged the French Navy to come to America's aid. Unfortunately, she was later captured by the British and died aboard a horrific prison ship. Her sacrifice remains one of history's greatest unsolved mysteries.
1781. The final hour of the war had arrived. The Culper Ring sent Washington precise intelligence that British General Cornwallis was trapped at Yorktown. Based on this information, Washington marched his troops south and alerted the French Navy to block the sea route. The result? The British were forced to surrender, and American independence was secured. After the war ended, these ordinary people, Abraham, Robert, Anna, all returned to their quiet, everyday lives. There were no medals, no rewards. Their identities were so well guarded that the world did not even know who the Culper Spy Ring was until the 1930s.
A winter night in 1780. Abraham Woodhull was sleeping in his own home when suddenly there was a violent pounding on the door. British Colonel John Graves Simcoe had arrived with his soldiers. Simcoe suspected that Abraham was somehow involved in the exchange of secret litters. Abraham managed to escape through a back window and hid in the dense woods. The British took his father hostage and ransacked the house, smashing furniture to pieces. That night, Abraham realized he wasn't just gambling with his own life, but the lives of his entire family. In Manhattan, alongside Robert worked another indomitable man, Hercules Mulligan. He was a tailor who sewed clothes for high-ranking British officers. When officers came to his shop to be measured, they thought of this tailor as just an ordinary man. They would discuss major war plans right in front of him. Once, an officer casually mentioned that they were going to capture General Washington in a secret mission the very next day. Mulligan immediately sent word through his African-American servant, Cato. Washington changed his location at the last moment and escaped certain death. We often know the big names, but we must not forget the brave, nameless individuals like Cato. Cato was Mulligan's slave, but he was a true hero. He would take the information Mulligan gathered and gallop past British checkpoints to reach the American camps. Many times the British would stop him, but Cato spoke in a way that made them dismiss him as a mere servant. Without Cato's tireless efforts, much of the Culper Ring's intelligence would never have reached Washington. Anchored in New York Harbor at that time was the HMS Jersey, a living hell. It was an abandoned British warship used as a floating prison. If a spy was captured, they were sent here. There was no food, only disease and death. Many members of the Culper Ring lived in constant terror that if caught, this would be their final destination. It is believed that the mysterious Agent 355 drew her last breath in the dark, cramped quarters of this very ship.
Do you know how the Culper Ring created their secret codes? Major Talmadge developed a specialized dictionary containing 763 words. For example, 1 meant attack, 200 meant ship, and 711 referred to George Washington himself. No one could decipher the letters without this codebook. British intelligence tried desperately to crack the code, but when historians finally unveiled it 150 years later, they were astonished by how perfect a system they had created in that era. Robert Townsend, known as Culper Jr., was one of the Ring's most vital spies. However, this secret life was eating away at him every moment. He couldn't tell his family, not even his father, what he was actually doing. Under the guise of his business, he gathered information on British officers and uncovered counterfeit currency plots. But every second was spent in fear of being caught. He was constantly haunted by questions. Was he doing the right thing? If he were caught, what would happen to his family? This mental pressure made him increasingly isolated, yet he couldn't stop. The dream of his country's independence kept him moving forward. To every member of the Culper Spy Ring, George Washington was not just a general, he was the embodiment of freedom. They knew the immense hardships Washington was facing. Once, when Washington felt so discouraged that he sent a message to the ring asking, "Should I give up hope?" the Culper Ring responded with a highly risky message. "Sir, our faith in you is unshakable. We will bring you news of every British move. Do not lose hope." This message gave Washington new strength, knowing he had invisible heroes standing by his side. The British were not fools. They knew there were American spies within their ranks. Colonel John Graves Simcoe was the British Army's best counterintelligence chief. Simcoe and his soldiers conducted raid after raid in Long Island to hunt down Culper Ring members. He kept a close watch on Anna Smith Strong's laundry line and grew suspicious of Abraham Woodhull. Once, he came so close that Abraham had to flee his own house to escape British soldiers. It was a war of nerves, where a single mistake meant certain death. In the final stages of the war, French assistance was essential. The Culper Ring did more than just report on the British. They established secret communication with the French Navy. Mysterious figures like Agent 355 relayed the positions of British fleets to French envoys. It was this precise information that allowed the French Navy to reach Yorktown at the perfect time, blocking the British escape by sea. This was an international intelligence mission where American and French spies worked shoulder to shoulder. The war ended and America became independent, but the members of the Culper Ring received no public recognition. George Washington himself wanted their identities to remain secret, perhaps thinking they might be needed again for such work in the future. Abraham Woodhull returned to his farm. Robert Townsend went back to managing his shop. They received no medals, and their names were not written in the history books of their time. For years they maintained their silence. It was only 150 years later, in the 1930s, when their secret letters were discovered, that the world realized what extraordinary deeds these ordinary people had accomplished. After the war, the members of the Culper Ring kept their identities so strictly hidden that their story was buried in the pages of history. Washington himself had ordered them to remain secret, knowing that such spies might be needed again in the future. For nearly 150 years, the names of these heroes remained unknown. In the 1930s, a historian discovered some strange coded letters among George Washington's private papers. After extensive research, he managed to break those codes, and the incredible story of the Culper Ring finally came to light. The world learned how a few ordinary people had saved a nation's independence. Once discovered, the story of the Culper Spy Ring became more than just a historical event. It became a blueprint for espionage and modern intelligence operations. Every American intelligence agency, such as the CIA or FBI, draws inspiration from the Culper Ring's methods. Their use of invisible ink, code books, and specialized signal systems continues to be used in more advanced forms today. The Culper Ring proved that intelligence, courage, and unwavering loyalty to one's country are far more vital than technology alone. The thrilling tale of the Culper Ring has fascinated not only historians, but also writers and filmmakers. Many books have been written, and various television series and films have been produced based on this story. The popular television series Turn, Washington Spies dramatically brought the lives of the Culper Ring to the screen, introducing these invisible heroes to audiences worldwide. Their story proves that real life can often be more fascinating and breathtaking than fiction.
The story of the Culper Ring is not just about the tactics of espionage. It is a story of silent sacrifice and true patriotism. They did not seek recognition or crave rewards. They simply wanted their country to be free. Ordinary people like Abraham Woodhull, Robert Townsend, Anna Smith Strong, and Hercules Mulligan risked their families and their lives for a dream they might not see fully realized in their own lifetimes. It was their silent sacrifice that laid the very foundation of American independence. This epic saga of the Culper Spy Ring reminds us that history is not just written by kings, emperors, or great generals. Often, the most significant changes are brought about by ordinary people working in silence. Today, the History Vault has brought you the story of those invisible heroes, without whose sacrifice modern America might have been impossible. Their indomitable spirit and courage will continue to inspire us for generations. History is not just a series of events, it is the story of people who risked their lives to pave the way for the future. When Major John Andre was captured, based on information from the Culper Ring, Benedict Arnold realized his time was up. As soon as he received the news, he abandoned his wife and fled on a British ship named the Vulture. When Washington arrived at West Point, he could not find Arnold. The news of this betrayal broke him so deeply that he told his officers, "Arnold wanted to sell our very soul." For the next several months, Culper Ring agents spread a net across Manhattan to capture Arnold, but by a stroke of luck, he managed to survive and escape. To bring Arnold to justice, Washington and the Culper Ring devised a daring plan. A soldier named Sergeant John Champ was instructed to orchestrate a dramatic desertion. Champ put on an act in front of everyone and joined the British camp so he could kidnap Arnold. For several weeks, he stayed very close to Arnold and even planned to trap him in a garden. However, at the very last moment, Arnold's unit was moved, causing Champ's mission to fail. It remains one of the bravest and most secretive failed missions in American history, made possible only through the assistance of the Culper Ring. Around 1782, the British realized they were losing the war. In desperation, they tried to incite conflict among the American common folk. They began using local loyalists, British supporters, to set fire to American food storehouses. Robert Townsend of the Culper Ring obtained a secret list of this conspiracy while sitting in his coffee house. The list detailed which towns were targeted for arson. Because this information reached the right hands in time, many towns were saved from destruction. Ordinary spies, in that moment, became the saviors of entire cities.
November 25, 1783. The British were finally leaving New York. This day is known as Evacuation Day. George Washington entered the city in a grand victory procession. Thousands of people cheered along the streets, but amidst that crowd, nowhere were Abraham Woodhull or Robert Townsend seen as heroes. They stood hidden behind the masses, dressed as ordinary citizens, watching Washington pass. As Washington rode by the crowd, he briefly stopped his horse, looked into Robert's eyes, and gave a quiet but meaningful nod. That nod was After the war, these individuals took an oath never to reveal their work to anyone. They didn't burn their code books. Instead, they hid them underground or in old chests. Even as Abraham Woodhull was dying, he didn't tell his children who he truly was. It wasn't until historian Morton Pennypacker uncovered the truth before 1930 that all of America was stunned. They realized that the foundation of their freedom was laid by people who never craved fame or recognition. After the war, Abraham Woodhull returned to his ordinary life as a farmer. However, the terrors of the war never truly left his mind.
Whenever there was a knock at the door, he would startle, fearing that British Colonel Simcoe had finally come to arrest him. He taught his children to always be vigilant, but he never told them why. In 1826, as he lay on his deathbed, those secret code numbers were still on his lips. He went to his grave without a single medal, but his soul was at peace because he knew his country was finally free. Robert Townsend, known as Culper Jr., never married after the war. He left Manhattan to return to his family home and lived a life of solitude. He protected his secrets so fiercely that when his family opened his private chest after his death, they found nothing but business accounts. He had destroyed his original spy diaries long ago. He wanted his deeds to be known only to God and George Washington. It took another 100 years for his name to finally appear in the pages of history. The sailor, Caleb Brewster, was the only member of the Ring who lived a somewhat public life after the war. He joined the government service and continued his fight against smugglers in the Long Island Sound. In his old age, he would tell his grandchildren stories of the sea. He never explicitly said he was a spy, but he would remark, "Sometimes a small boat can defeat a massive warship if that boat carries the message of truth."
George Washington is often called America's first spy master. The lessons he learned from the Culper Ring were documented for future generations. The powerful intelligence systems we see today in the CIA or FBI had their seeds sown in 1778 by those ordinary people of Setauket. From invisible ink to dead drop methods, all are contributions of the Culper Ring. They didn't just win a war, they built an invisible defense system.
History books may not remember every name, but time eventually finds its heroes. The Culper Spy Ring proved that patriotism does not require fame or glory. Even if you are an ordinary person, your small efforts can change the destiny of a nation. These humble farmers, housewives, and merchants are no longer with us, but we breathe today in the free land they helped create. Their incredible and miraculous story will remain immortal in our hearts.
Friends, how did you like this breathtaking chapter of history? If the sacrifices of these ordinary heroes inspired you, please like and share this video. Join us in our search for more unknown and thrilling mysteries of history. Subscribe to the History Vault channel right now and hit the bell icon so you never miss a future mysterious tale. Thank you for staying with us.